you, Sam? Are you? All right, we welcome everyone out tonight to the December Citizen Involvement Committee meeting. And we'll start off having Dennis do the roll call.
Okay, December 2nd. Kanema is here. Two Rivers. Gaffney Lane.
Here.
Park Place.
Here.
Hillendale. Tower Vista. McLaughlin.
Here. Yeah.
Rivercrest. Caulfield.
Yep.
Berkeley Hills.
Here.
Thank you.
Great. We have quite a bit to get through tonight, so we will just jump right in. As many of you know, the South End neighborhood is one of the neighborhoods that's inactive, and we have a land use tonight presentation that they would normally make at that meeting, but because they're inactive, they needed to come before us. So Sam Thomas is here tonight, so come on up and introduce yourselves, and come up to the mic and make sure it's on. And
Yes, so now we're on.
Good evening, members of the committee.
is there mics on? I have to turn them on.
I believe it. Yeah.
There we go.
My name is Sam Thomas. I'm with Lenity Architecture. I'm here tonight with Aaron Clark from Lenity Architecture as well, and Jeffrey Wellington, representing the property for the proposal in front of you tonight. This is a project, it's a memory care addition. It's located at 914 South End Road. The adjacent property is an existing memory care facility that has 38 beds. And this would be a 16-bed addition to that property. And I just wanted to give Jeffrey the opportunity to introduce himself and the project and the mission of the project as well.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm the owner of River Terrace. My background is I spent 14 years as a social worker and then almost 3 years as a nursing home administrator before partnering with my dad, Steve, who's a developer in Minneapolis, St. Paul area. And so we partnered together on this project, purchased River Terrace back in November of last year, did some remodeling work to this pretty new memory care community. And because there were some code and regulatory issues there that we discovered. And so we did some remodeling work and partnered with a management company that we're very proud of. I've spent, having worked in senior care, I know that there's good, bad, and decent management companies out there, and I was interested in partnering with an excellent management company because I am committed to excellent care at this memory care community on a consistent basis. and I'm very excited to be working with Caring Places. They've been with us for over a year, hired a very seasoned administrator, Molly, who does a great job there. I'm there on a daily basis to support the efforts to ensure also that we are delivering on that care approach. So I partner in doing a number of things to ensure that that happens. And so, you know, the Jason neighbor came to me, you know, in January and said, there's this property that's for sale, and do you have any interest? And I said, after looking at it for a while, and I said yes, because I think that there's a need. You know, a market study that done a year ago said that there's a need, and we want to serve a broad demographic of folks. We've got 16 wonderful residents currently and fantastic staff. So we're making steady progress. So that's kind of what we're about, and committed to excellent care and being a good steward of the neighborhood is what I'm interested in. So that's it.
And as I mentioned, so it's existing building is a 38-bed memory care residence, and we're proposing a 16-bed addition on the property to the north, which is at 914 South End Road, operated by Caring Places Management. And the focus is specializing in care for residents with Alzheimer's, dementia, and other forms of memory loss. Just want to give you a sense of the type of resident that would be at this facility. Typically, it's a senior in their 80s. They have dementia, Alzheimer's, or other memory care issues that they're suffering from. They're in relatively good physical health. These patients or the residents aren't bedridden or confined to, you know, unable to move on their own. So that's the kind of typical memory care profile of a resident that would utilize this facility. In regards to the operations, so all meals are provided to the residents. They have indoor activities such as mental and physical fitness. It's a safe environment, secure. Residents aren't kind of going out on their own without supervision. And there's staff on site 24/7. So this gives you an idea of the site plan with the addition. So the existing building is on the southern portion of the site. It has an existing parking area. The addition, it would be on the property that's at 914 South End Road. There's an existing home there that would be removed for the addition. So this 16-bed memory care facility, we would have street improvements that would be required through the city, including a planter strip, new sidewalk. There'd be a walkway, and on the rear, there would be an outdoor patio area for residents. And then inside there would be, you know, the 16 beds. Each unit has a bathroom, some with showers, some with just a toilet and sink. And there's central amenities for bathing for residents, and then also a dining area, and then a music room. We're looking at preserving one of the existing spruce trees that's on that northwest corner of the property. And then on the existing site area, we would be adding 3 parking spaces, accounting for the addition of staff, obviously, that would be needed to run the facility. Obviously, the residents don't drive because of their mental state. But other than that, there wouldn't be many changes on the existing site. We would be removing one parking space, or not removing, but converting a parking space in the existing parking area to a landscape island to meet the city requirement of breaking up the parking run with, if it has more than 8 contiguous spaces. As far as setbacks, we're meeting the front setbacks that the city requires, which would be a 20-foot setback from there's also a 1-foot dedication along the property line of South End Road. And then a 20-foot setback approximately to the front of the building. Also in front, we'd have storm planters that would take the water or, runoff from the impervious surface areas and direct it to the front to treat it. And then that would be discharged into the public sewer system. Storm system. And that's it on there. So I'm actually going to have Aaron Clark come up and speak about the architecture of the building and the aesthetics of the building.
Hi, I'm Aaron Clark with Lenity Architecture. Excited to be here. So, yeah, the exterior design and palette. So I just want to take one point before we continue on is the existing building is a combination of 2 and 1 stories. You can see in the distance, you can see how the building steps down to 1 stories in certain corners. And what we've done with this building addition is to make sure that we're compatible with the neighboring adjacent buildings, and the fact that the single-family homes to the right, it's a single-story building. So we used a very residential kind of vernacular in the gable forms, and the hip roofs, a very residential feeling. It's actually a mansard roof. There will be mechanical units and so forth on the roof behind there, but that'll be screened by the mansard roof. Once again, you can see with this exterior rendering that we have a series of kind of residential detailing. We have the lap siding, we have the nice warm stone, we've got the nice contrast with the white trim, and we've got the cedar shake on the gables. So the next image shows how we complemented the addition in terms of the stone. We'll be using similar stone, we'll be using similar color palette. So that image gives you an idea of the existing building with the new addition off to the right. And then that's a closer view up. And of course there'll be street trees, there'll be the sidewalk as Sam had mentioned. And that's a further out view from view 1 that has the existing facility in the background. And that's a view heading south. And that's a view of the patio at the rear. But essentially, very residential in feel, very kind of warm color palette to match the neighborhood. So with that, I will open it up for questions. And I'll let Sam come up and
answer the questions.
And we can answer the questions. No. Yeah.
I have a couple questions that you can probably answer, Jeffrey. Have you interacted directly with any of the neighbors? Have you had any run-ins with them or any problems with them?
No, I've actually spent a lot of time talking to the neighbors. When I first began this project and closed on it, I spoke to probably 30 neighbors around. And more recently, I'm outside doing landscaping, and I've casually talked to a variety of neighbors who walk by. And the adjacent neighbors, I've informed them of kind of the plan, and just to lure them in a little bit and answer any questions that they've had. They haven't addressed any concerns with me or raised any concerns with me at this point.
Okay. Are there any trees? You show the 1 tree remaining. Are there any other trees that are coming down that are currently there?
Yeah, there's the ones we had kind of surveyed. I'll go back. Well, they don't show up on here, but there's 2 pretty good sized cedar trees kind of right on the south property line. I think they're around the 30 to 40 inch DBH size for the trunks. And then I think there's also a juniper or another tree on that where we're showing the break area. Let's see if I can kind of around here. And then there's the 2 cedars are approximately here. They're kind of right along the fence line.
Yep.
So with the building of that size, that they would be in the construction area, wouldn't be able to be preserved. But the one we think we can preserve would be, I think it's a 20-inch spruce. And obviously, with part of the city requirements, there's some mitigation. Haven't fully gotten comments on what exactly we might be doing for that, but some of the options are replanting at a certain ratio based on the size of trees that are coming down, or also, fee in lieu. So the city has some options you're probably familiar with, but so we're still exploring what that will look like. We do have kind of a conceptual landscape plan, but not quite at the stage to share yet. But the idea would be to landscape it in kind with what the existing area looks like.
One last question, Jeffrey. We have, I notice a lot of other jurisdictions, not necessarily Oregon City, have a problem with memory care and patients getting loose. I don't know a better way to word that.
Yeah.
Residents wandering. So I have not heard of any in this area. I'm just wondering how an additional, so are you saying you currently only have 16 residents, so you're not to capacity
Correct.
yet? So what kinds of things do you have in place for?
Well, certainly that would be a major concern of ours, having a resident that we're responsible for eloping. So there's a lot of regulations about that. So in the existing community, there's an interior access point where you have to code in and out, and residents don't know the code. So you have to code in and out. And then there's an outside exit point as well. Beyond the fact that we are very well staffed. So, staff would be monitoring residents, on a frequent basis. There's an exterior courtyard that's nice. Being able to go outside is important for any one of us. And that has a gate that's also coded. That gate is, or that the outside metal gate is 7 feet tall. So hopefully we don't, have a pole vaulter who comes on board. If that's the case, then we're in trouble. But I agree. Elopement is a major thing that we are all aware of. This wing there's not going to be it's going to be attached to the existing community. So, that would, I think, help with that. But certainly, that safety component is we don't want people wandering around, and that wouldn't be a good thing.
Right.
Could you kind of give a rundown of staff? I mean, what their positions are and how many are on at night?
Yeah, so I would say the general ratio is kind of 7 or 8 to 1 on a day shift, and I'm just talking about caregivers. Mm-hmm. So you have caregivers, med aides, you're going to have an activities person, business office manager, maintenance person, kitchen personnel administrator. So in terms of direct care staff, and we also have a nurse as well on staff. We have it's generally 7 to 1, 7 or 8 to 1 in terms of 7 or 8 residents to 1 staff member. On an evening shift, so like 2 to 10, it's about 9 to 10 to 1, and then on a night shift, it's going to be like 17 or 18 to 1. You're always going to have 2 or 3 staff members on a night shift, because what happens if, there's some sort of fire? Then how do we deal with evacuation issues? So yeah, no, it's going to be staff, and we're currently fully staffed, which is nice. It's not an easy feat, because as someone who's managed these places, it's not easy. So it's a continual process of, ensuring that you have the right staff, training staff members on a continual basis, and keeping at it. But I agree, like a night shift, that's a spot where you're more likely to be, a little more at risk. We do have managers who are at our community on 7 days a week. It's not just managers Monday through Friday, so we have managers who are coming in on both Saturdays and Sundays to help with, just making sure that things are working properly.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, great. We will make sure and get you the document that you need for your application.
Okay, great. Just the confirmation of having this.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Time.
Okay, Josh. looks like Josh, you and Bob have 2 presentations this evening.
Yeah.
So you have 3 minutes each. Oh wait, that's for something else.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Josh Wheeler. I'm the Assistant City Engineer for the city, and this is...
Bob Balgos, Project Engineer for the city.
And we're kind of tag teaming tonight, a double presentation, so I'll just give a little intro, then Bob will do his about a 10-minute or so presentation. You can ask any questions about his right after that, and then I'll go into my presentation, and then any questions after that for me. And so we're trying to combine 2 items together so that we only have to go through 1 public process and 1 land use applications. We're trying to simplify it and do it all at once rather than a bunch of separate items. So that's why you'll see they're related, but not at the same time. So proposed policies for sanitary, sewer, and overhead utilities. So they're all public works and utility related. So what we're going to talk about is Bob's going to talk about sanitary sewer. I&I, or the infiltration and inflow policy that we're proposing. He'll also be talking about some adjustments to the sanitary sewer design standards. And then because of those, then we also need to do a city code update to be able to implement those policies. And then for overhead utilities, a topic that I'll talk about, we are currently operating on kind of an unwritten policy, the way we've done things for years. But we feel that we needed to write that into a policy and maybe make some adjustments on how we do things. And so that's what the proposed policy is that I'll discuss. And then that requires some city code updates to a number of different chapters. The whole reason we're doing this tonight is 1, it's part of the public outreach process, but 2, we wanted to get some advice from the CIC on and you'll see this at the end of each presentation. Your initial opinion of those policies, do you think it's a good idea? Do you like what you hear? Do you think it's way off in left field? That kind of general question. And then secondly, we'll show you where we intend to go next with our public outreach and what we've done so far, and just get a general opinion on that as well. So that's kind of the feedback that we're looking for. So here's Bob.
Again, my name is Bob Balgos. I'm with the city, and thank you for the opportunity to present here today. We have been working with our consultant, Murray Smith, on developing this I&I program. Tonight, we're going to be talking about a few things: the inflow and infiltration, the definition of it, the 5-year recommended capital improvement project, and the policy. And at the very end, we can go with questions. So overall, the definition of inflow and infiltration in simple terms, inflow is in green here. Simple terms, it just means surface runoff that's going into the sanitary system. The city has separate systems with storm and sanitary. Any surface water should go to the storm sewer. But we have areas in the city where some catch basins are connected to the sanitary sewer, and those are called cross connections. In blue are infiltration sources, and this is, in simple terms, groundwater entering the sanitary sewer system. And this can be reached or conveyed inside the system through multiple things, where a foundation drain is connected to the lateral. It could be a broken lateral based on root intrusions. And also, as you may know, the city of Oregon City is one of the oldest cities, so we have some aging infrastructure here. So there's manholes deteriorating and broken pipes. So any groundwater that's going to the sanitary sewer is what we're trying to prevent here and fix. So here's just a picture of a camera looking into the pipe. As you see in your left there, you'll see water seeping through the joint, and that's the groundwater that's going into our sanitary system. So it's clean water getting into our system that's ultimately going down to our treatment center to be treated, which should not be the case. And what you see there on the lower, where the water flow is, that's what we want to see. And So how did we determine which areas in the city have a lot of I&I sources? So we went through a series of smoke testing throughout the city. So this is just a graphic of how smoke testing is done. Two sides from the upstream and downstream manhole are plugged with sandbags or plugged, and then in the center manhole, the blower machine injects smoke. And if there's any smoke that comes out from anywhere in the area, that is a strong indicator that there's a leakage going into our system. Or cross connections, if it comes out of a catch basin. So our key findings here, and what we determined is we need to disconnect the inflow sources, which are the downspouts and the catch basins, and we need to rehabilitate the infiltration sources. That's through a leaking system. And what we found out in this analysis is that the leakiest areas in this city are the oldest areas, which are the Rivercrest and McLaughlin areas. So into this 5-year CIP project list is kind of a rundown on the budget and costs. The info disconnections, it's about $600,000. We might disregard that because that's going to be on the homeowner. You'll see in the next couple slides. We also have areas where catch basins where they're cross-connected to sanitary lack a storm system in the area. So in the second bullet item, there's the storm extensions. So when we disconnect those catch basins, we want to put them into its correct system, which is the storm system. And so we will extend the storm system up so the catch basin will lead into those. The third and fourth bullet, basin 10 and 8, is the McLaughlin Rivercrest, which is the leakiest basins. So we will do a full rehab on there. And we found in basin 16, which is the settler's point, there's some early signs of leakage, so we want to just do some flow monitoring, kind of pinpoint where exactly the leak is coming from. So that's just an investigation at this point. And the last is the ongoing I&I structural renewal program. This is just your preventive care and maintenance, repair and maintenance annual. So what is the improvement probability? So if we fix the leakiest basins, we're just doing the manholes and sewer mains only, we theoretically reduce I&I about 20%. And that's just manholes and sewers. If we include the lateral to the right-of-way, which the right-of-way is up to the face of curb, or edge of pavement if the face of curb is not present, that, in theory, provides 40% reduction of I&I. Now, if we extend that further and look at the holistic approach, which is up to the foundation or 5 feet up to the face of building, now we get a total of 65% I&I reduction, and that's what we are approaching. So I guess why do we care about I&I? Well, one, Tri-City Sewer Plant is at capacity at the moment, and that's why they are improving and adding more, a second digester or another digester. And part to alleviate that is to reduce I&I. Other cities are under legal requirements to reduce I&I. And as I mentioned earlier, treating stormwater at wastewater is unnecessary. It's clean water. It should belong to the storm system. And additional flow in the system can raise rates unnecessarily. So here is just the codes that we have currently in place. And this is section 2.16 in the sewer design standards. First point is building sewers are installed and maintained by property owners. Second is no roof, surface, foundation, or stormwater drains lines shall be connected to the public sewer. And as I mentioned earlier, the city owns the lateral up to the face of curb from the main line to the face of curb or edge of pavement. And the rest of that is on the homeowner. So Some recommendations that we have in regards to private inflow solutions is any homeowner with storm gutter inflow connections will be required to disconnect, and per city code, as you saw in the previous slide. And in regards to the private infiltration solutions, we had a few options to give up. And this is the private side of the lateral, where the city and homeowners share costs of the private side lateral of repairing. That's if we find the lateral defective. And just to keep in mind, the cost that it will cost is about $1,200. It's going to be about $1,200, and the average cost, really, if it was one party owning the whole cost, is about $4,000. So for the homeowner, it's going to be just $1,200. And the option 2 would be homeowner funding the whole private side lateral. So as far as outreach has gone so far, the efforts have been made in a city commission work session back in June. We presented a draft policy there. We had a development stakeholder group presentation last month. And in the near future, I think sometime early next year, we'll have individual presentations to the two basins, which is the Rivercrest and McLaughlin neighborhood associations. And also this policy is going to require a code change and requires planning commission and city commission hearings through a legislative process. Any questions?
How do you know, so you said the property owners need to disconnect first step. How will they know if theirs is connected? I mean, I don't know if mine's connected.
So that's how we did smoke testing. And so through that smoke testing, we had a log on which homeowners had downspouts smoke came out from. So that's how we determined that.
And then additionally, that's how you take care of the inflow side of things. And the solution to that is quite commonly just to disconnect and let it splash on the ground, and then it's okay. You can also do more expensive fixes like connecting to the nearby storm sewer if you want to. But the other thing would be their sewer laterals. How do they know if their lateral is good or bad? That's going to be part of a programmatic approach where we get the rights to be on the property and televise the line, and then go in and see what it looks like. And if it's looking good, we're like, oh, don't need to mess with that one. If it's looking bad, then that's when we'll be sending a letter saying, here are your options. You can just take care of it yourself, or if you want to partner with us, $1,200, and we'll just take care of everything. And it's a lot. We think that's the best option because that way we can do one big project all at once where we do everything all at once. But some people just, don't necessarily want you on their property, and so we're giving people other options. But the ultimate goal is to fix the problem and not get under a legal situation that some of the other cities are already under.
So if you're going to do a scope, are you just going to do that? I mean, you have to get permission? Do you have to just give notice? What if you don't get permission? I mean, how does that work?
We've been talking to our legal team about that of, do we need the right to televise a sewer? We know we need the right to be on the property to do construction. Mm-hmm. And so we would, if that were the case, we would reach out and we would partner and we would get a letter signed and all those sorts of things. For the scoping, we're still talking about legally, can we just scope it? Because it's a free scope for anyone. We're not charging for the scope. Right. Yeah, we're seeing if that's just the simple way to do it.
Linda?
Did you do all neighborhoods or just McLaughlin and Rivercrest?
So we did smoke testing in all the neighborhoods, and what we found out in our studies that for the best bang for our buck, these two neighborhoods are the leakiest. We want to fix first because about 50% of the I&I is coming through those two basins alone, two neighborhoods alone. And so, to answer your question, did we do the entire city? Yes, we did. Okay. And this program, this 5-year program, is just going to focus on those two basins. It's going to be, that's why we're going to call it a pilot program. And ongoing, we're going to start to look at other basins.
Do you think that perhaps there would be a way to get a different reading? Maybe if the house had been vacant, you wouldn't have had water in any of the traps or anything, the S traps that you would have gotten a different reading and do you take that into consideration? Maybe the homes, some of the homes were vacant, or does that make a difference? The home's not lived in, no one's using the water, and everything would be going up through the roof, your smoke.
You're going to answer this? Sure. Okay. In general, the problem is the stormwater from outside coming into the system, and so it wouldn't matter if someone's living in it or not. We would still see the same issues. So if the roof drains are connected, we'd still see the smoke coming out the pipe. If we saw that now, like at some point, hopefully soon, we'll be coming in and televising those lines, and that's going to tell us if the lines are leaky or not. We can't tell that from the smoke. We can tell a little bit from the smoke, but not always. So their usage of the house doesn't affect our knowledge of what's happening in the system overall. Yeah, because not only do we use smoke testing, we also use some flow monitoring where you put meters in the sewers, and that also helped us determine that Rivercrest and McLaughlin have a higher intensity of this problem than the other neighborhoods. That's why we're starting there first, even though the hope is to do the whole city over a number of years.
Will the cost stay the same as you?
That's the expectation at this point. At this point, it would be a policy that is adopted by the city commission, as well as code changes that allow us to implement that policy. And so it would all be in code and policy that the only way to change that would be a revision to the policy. So, I mean, in theory, if prices skyrocket, we could maybe in 5 years after we've done Rivercrest and McLaughlin, because it'll probably take 2, 3, 4, 5 years to complete this. Once we get that and we see the results are good and we see that, we've made a difference and decide, yep, we should continue through the rest of the city, then we'll have to assess at that time, should we change the fee? And then we'd have to bring that to the city commission to raise the fee.
Bob?
How do you establish priorities for repairs?
So in general, the two major things that we're looking at, well, three major things that we're looking at are, on the private side, we're looking at, are the roof drains connected? And then secondly, are the laterals in poor condition? On the public side, we're really looking at, are the catch basins connected to the wrong sewer, the sanitary? And so because we have a sanitary master plan as well as a stormwater master plan forthcoming, we intend on taking care of the public ourselves, because it's our requirement anyway. The project may happen as soon as this coming summer. The others, we prioritize it just based on, we have a need, there's money in the budget, and so we know that McLaughlin and Rivercrest are the worst areas, and so therefore that's where we're going to start. The solution's fairly simple. It's fixing the sewer lateral. And we're going to do it as one big neighborhood, so we'll be televising the entire Rivercrest, entire McLaughlin neighborhood. We'll probably do, I don't know if we're going to do them all at once or one each, and then do the next project the next year. But ultimately, we'll go in and we'll see what all the fixes are and then talk to each homeowner. And hopefully, in some cases, people have some brand new sewers of recent day, and we'll be like, nope, yours is fine, don't worry about it. So, but does that kind of answer your question?
Well, my question was, if you have 10 projects, how do you establish which ones would be the first 3 that you would want to take?
Yeah, and so we would do it as one project. So, I mean, let's suggest that we break it up into year 1, we do Rivercrest, and year 2, we do McLaughlin. We wouldn't be doing house 1 in Rivercrest and then house 2 in Rivercrest. That's not the way we would do it. We would come in and know all the problems. We would then talk to each resident to see if they're opting in with the 1,200 or going to do it on their own. And then once we know that scope, then we'll do a bid document where we say, okay, take care of our sewer mains by doing lining treatments that exist out there, and do these sewer laterals, these, let's say, 50 sewer laterals, and that'll be one big project for X amount of dollars. And so we wouldn't have all these little individual projects.
Denise?
So $1,200 is a really good price for a sewer repair. Been there, done that. would that be a one-time fee, or would people be able to pay partial payments throughout a time period?
Yeah, so we're looking at a few options here. One option would be the one-time fee, and the second option would be a 2 or 4 year loan, which can be tacked on monthly on your bill, either a sewer bill now, or it could be a separate bill. We're kind of fine-tuning those options right now, but you'll have two options.
Great.
Carla?
So I was going to ask what Kenise asked, number one, but also, I guess for the average homeowner who doesn't understand what you guys are looking at, it's more of you're looking at leaks from the sewage line, not directly the sewage line. So technically, you could probably find more issues than just what you're looking for. Isn't that correct? Because some of these homes are really old and may have not had a sewage line repair, technically. So how would you address that issue to the homeowner if it's like, it's a mess?
So the good thing for the homeowner is whether they have a minor problem or a major problem,
Okay.
the cost will be the same if they choose to partner.
Okay.
So for example, there are pretty much 3 fixes that come to mind for a sewer lateral.
Mm-hmm.
It's either lining, where they throw a new solid line. It's kind of like putting a coating on the inside and it closes up all the cracks.
Right.
Or you can do something called pipe bursting, where they push a brand new sewer kind of through the existing and kind of burst it out. And then the other is, let's say that there's dips and cracks and holes and everything in it. We rip it out and put a new one in.
And it's still $1,200?
Yeah, we aren't
That's
changing the
awesome.
price based on the situation.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bargain.
That's $6,000 normally at least.
I know.
Yeah, 10,000.
Yeah.
Good point to push.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this part? All right.
Thank
So it
you.
sounds like we got positive
You
support.
do.
there.
You got some positive support.
On our public outreach strategy, we've done some things already, and then we plan on doing individual meetings at the 2 neighborhoods. And we kind of wanted to get an impression from seeing how this went, and then seeing how those 2 neighborhood meetings go to determine if we needed do any type of open house or something like that. But we would kind of base that on how, the interaction at those neighborhood meetings. So
If I could recommend before you do those at the neighborhood is to have the answer about the financing, because that's gonna be one of your first questions, and the I don't know, we'll let you know. It'd be nice if you knew that.
Okay.
That'd be. But yeah, if you have some numbers that you can say, it would normally cost you da-da-da.
Right.
But because we're getting it as a group, we can get it down to this price, and the city's gonna pay 2/3, that's a good sell.
Perfect.
It is.
Thank you for the feedback.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Going to move on to the next one then?
Yes.
Okay.
Underground.
Underground utility policy. So let's just jump into it. I think it's simpler. Our existing policy, we have a city code that says franchise utilities, and a franchise utility is like gas, electric, cable, telephone, fiber optic, those type of utilities. It says that all new utilities shall be placed underground. That's generally what we follow. Whenever you're on a vacant piece of land, like a Abernathy Landing subdivision or some of the subdivisions that went down in the southwest part of the city this last year, open space, you put everything underground, that's the way it is. When you're dealing with existing infrastructure, something like Malala Avenue or McLaughlin and Rivercrest neighborhoods, you're generally trying to, the utilities like to go on poles whenever they can because the pole's already there. But in the newer parts of the city, we don't allow them to put poles in. They have to put everything underground. So that's pretty much what Chapter 13 says. We have this comment in Chapter 17 in Site Plan Design Review, which is for your commercial land uses, that says all utility lines shall be placed underground. So what in the world does that mean? Our interpretation has been that all new utilities for development or requests by a franchise utility shall be installed underground, but also that all existing overhead utilities adjacent to a development shall be relocated underground. The goal of undergrounding has been to clean up the right-of-way. It can be, not the best looking sort of thing. Reduce issues with downing of wires in storms, because overhead wires fall down in windstorms. And then there's that potential for land value increases if you can get those underground, because then you have a prettier aesthetic, a pretty front door approach, right, to your land. So that's kind of our goal behind it. It's something we've been doing for a number of years. If you look at our mapping system, you see all these areas where we've placed things underground, a lot of it in their new areas. But what we've done in some of the older areas is we went to a property and said, okay, you need to place your lines underground, and you end up with situations where 5 of your neighbors didn't put them underground because it was a small partition or a very small subdivision. And so you have these, some are above, and then it goes down, and it goes back up. And so we started talking about that, going, does that really achieve what we're looking for at the end of the day? Because at the end of the day, 50 years from now, is everything going to be underground if you puzzle it together over time? Maybe not in something like McLaughlin Rivercrest. I mean, are those houses really going to redevelop and keep rebuilding? Some houses are getting quite old, and they like it that way. That's what people like about it. But issues we have with the utilities are when we do request things to go from existing overhead to underground, it's very costly. It's becoming more and more costly by the utilities. The developers, it's 100% their cost. When things are in our right-of-way, we have policies with the franchise utilities that says you have to get out of our way and move, but we still have to put the infrastructure in, like conduits in for them. And so there's still some cost to us for that. You have high voltage transmission lines that can go underground, but generally don't. I've looked at all the codes in the region, and most everyone is the same as our code that says if you're 35,000 volts or higher, which is a high transmission line, then don't put that underground. And that's, our code already says that, and we support that. There's a proportionality argument for those that are familiar with land use, that if you're making someone put something underground for a small 2-lot partition, is that really proportional? That question has come up a handful of times, and so we have to look at that and try and answer that question. Unfortunately, there's not really a calculation for that, and so how do you actually determine proportionality? It ends up being a subjective answer that, for those that know land use better, subjective is not the best word to use in land use. You want to be as clear and objective as possible. Undergrounding utilities can also cause major project delays. We saw a project this past year that was done with everything by May. Their lines did not get pushed underground until about, I think it was August or September, and so they actually finished their project in October. And they couldn't plat their project without that. Now, we ended up working a deal out with them because of a unique circumstance, but we had to make sure it was unique and not doing favors for a developer here or there. And then a last thing we have is our policy of having these lines go underground. Well, where are they going to go? Most of the time, there's no room in the right-of-way, and so they go in what's called a public utility easement. Quite often, those are usually 10 feet on the private property side, and that actually conflicts with current city code. So there are current building setbacks in the city code that says a building has to be 5 foot maximum. Well, you can't have a building in a PUE, and so how do we deal with that conflict when everything's got to go somewhere, and so what do we deal with those conflicts? So where we're at with our proposed policy is all new utilities shall be placed underground within a public utility easement or right-of-way. We're sticking with that if it's brand new, you still have to put it underground. That's the right policy. But when it's existing, do you always have to move it underground? So here's what we're saying here. All existing overhead utilities shall be relocated underground within a public utility easement or the right-of-way, except, here are our exceptions. Development of less than 1 acre, development with less than 200 feet of frontage, development proposing 5 subdivided lots or less. And those are ors, not ands. So you don't have to meet all 3 criteria. You just have to meet one of the criteria. So let's say you're doing a 2-acre development that has really large lots, that's 5 lots or less. You meet the 5 lots or less, no undergrounding required of the existing overhead. If your development is 100 feet wide, but it's 1.1 acres, again, it doesn't matter about the 1.1, the 100 feet applies, and you wouldn't have to place it underground. We use this criteria and match it up with all of the most recent, since 2017, subdivisions and partitions. And it pretty much, this is how we come up with the criteria. We found that this worked really well for what made common sense of and what seemed proportional too. And so we thought that would answer a lot of those questions. We continue to say no high transmission lines shall go underground. Now, the last thing that we added, I see you laughing, the exception to the exception. So we realize there's a fairness and equity issue that for the past so many years, we've been requiring a lot of people to place all their utilities underground and move those existing ones underground. Well, why did my neighbor 5 years ago have to put his underground, or actually it would be the other way around? Why is this new person partitioning and he doesn't have to put his underground, but she had to? And so that question we realize should be considered, and so we've said, if that development is within the same block of existing developments whereby the undergrounding of the existing overhead was required previously, then we will require it. Now, that doesn't always pass through the proportionality test, and so we'll just have to work through that as we go. But we thought there was a fairness issue that we should at least deal with there. So maybe we use McLaughlin neighborhood again as an example, very dense, not very much redevelopment occurring, but someone did have to do that because they chose to partition. Now person 3 years later is going to partition. We would require of them the same thing. So that way it feels fair. But a person a block away is like, no, we're not going to mess with that. So that was kind of the concept we came up with. The goal of the policy and the code amendment is, again, to underground where equitable but appropriate, create a clear definition and requirements within the code. So for example, those public utility easements, actually it says it right there, create specificity on public utility easements. Public utility easements are referenced in the code, inferred in the code, and stated at one point fairly abstractly. We've been using 10-foot public utility easements for at least 10 years from what I can tell. I found some construction details where it's on the detail, 2008, that's the 10-foot PUE. But it doesn't always work because of the conflict in the code. So we need to write language that's going to talk about 10 feet where appropriate, but in other times, we're either going to create some criteria or we're going to have staff work together collaboratively on how we can make that work at the end of the day. We're still working on those negotiations and conversations right now. But the bulk of everything else seems like we're all on board with. The impact of the policy and code amendment is that it creates a clear policy. We reduce that conflict with the building setbacks, and then we create a more proportional standard. Our outreach strategy is we went to the development stakeholders group in November and talked to them about that. We hope to review the policy concept with the City Commission in either later this month or in January, just to get their feelings on it, because the topic has been brought up more than once recently, actually, in those meetings. And then based on what we hear from the City Commission, that's going to tell us what other types of public outreach to do, besides Planning Commission and City Commission, which this would have to go through anyway because it's code amendments, and it would go through the same legislative process jointly with the I&I policy. So that's what we're thinking about and would love to hear your feedback.
So I wasn't able to go to the November stakeholders group. How was it received?
It was received fairly well. I mean, both of our policies were received fairly well. I think from the development community standpoint, they were pretty pleased about it because when you have these small developments, it's killing their profitability. They've said that. But we're not trying to look at it from that standpoint. We're looking at it from just a reasonableness standpoint, and they felt that kind of these criteria we had created seemed reasonable. We've sought their feedback, and no one's given us any written comments since that time.
And how did you come up with 5?
It was based on the subdivisions that have been proposed over the past 3-4 years, and admittedly, we did cheat a little, and West Lynn has a very similar policy, and that's how we got the idea of the criteria.
I can't go for that.
So we actually looked at all the region, most of the cities, and see what they all do. Some of them do hardly anything. Some of them have a couple unique things that we weren't interested in, and then we saw West Lynn's. We're like, that's what everyone's talking to us about. So we thought that was a good way to go.
Yeah, makes sense. Bob? Oh dear.
How will you ensure that all the planners and anybody in staff that the builder or homeowner or whoever would come in contact with are fully aware of the exception to the exception rule. Because I've seen some real horror stories across the counter because it seemed like not everybody was on the same page.
Yeah. So we've been having ongoing conversations, engineering and planning, for about 6 months or more now. While this whole process ultimately has to go through a land use application, we don't intend to make the application until staff is 100% on the same page and making sure that everything we've written we all agree with, the process, the policy, everything about it. And so it's going to be up to the directors and the managers of those departments to relay that to all the staff and make sure that they're on the same board. You know, we'll probably have a sit down where we all talk together as staff members and make sure everyone understands. We're also trying to, we don't have great documentation on what happened a lot of different places, and so what we're really going to have to do is look at properties from a block-to-block standpoint and go, has anything happened on those in recent years? And it's going to take a little more research when you get those pre-applications in. But I think that's kind of the way we're going to have to do it because there's no good system that has tracked that over time.
Yeah. Any other questions about this? Good job. We like proactive.
And so overall, everyone thinks that this is a good concept that we're coming up with. And yeah. Okay, good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you guys. All right, John, you're hoping yours is as well received? Yeah, you can leave that over here. Very happy to have John here this evening to talk to us about the Malala Avenue streetscape update that's very close to home to Gaffney and...
You ever heard of Malala Avenue before?
Once or twice.
Once or twice. Yeah, so I hope this is well received. We're planning to spend a few $1 million on Malala Avenue. And when I say Malala Avenue and the Malala Avenue streetscape project, we're generally talking from Beaver Creek Road to Highway 213. There's a little bit of exception to that, but that's generally the area that we're talking about. And most of the improvements happen on the west side, or what I think of as the residential side of Malala Avenue versus the commercial side, which is where the shopping center and Fred Meyer are at. But there are improvements on both sides of the street. So we just have been, we've definitely I hit Caulfield, I hit Gaffney. I haven't had a chance to hit any of the other neighborhoods with this, but we wanted to just kind of keep it on the road show so that, because the timeline for this is getting pretty short, and we're starting to see action that you'll see in the field. You may have already seen some action in the field, so, because we've done some surveying, obviously, we've done some potholing. There was quite a bit of potholing that happened the last couple of weeks, and some other things will be coming up pretty soon here. So just appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk to you folks, and if you'd like us to show up at your neighborhood meeting to give more information, I'm happy to do that as well, or send somebody who could probably do a better job with it than I can. So everyone in Oregon City uses Malala Avenue, and so over the years, Malala Avenue hasn't really changed much. For the most part, it's been Malala Avenue the way it sits today for a very, very long time. And this project here is going to change Malala Avenue in a pretty big way. And whenever you propose change in any community, but especially in Oregon City, there's usually some community concerns, and we've heard quite a few of those. So we feel like we've made some good headway on dealing with a lot of those community concerns. We'll continue to do those. We've heard some great comments, and some of which are going to be hard to use. There's comments that are on either side of the table. Some want it wider, some want it narrower, some want bike lanes, some don't want bike lanes. It kind of, we got lots of feedback, put it that way. But many of that, or a lot of that feedback, we're actually able to add components into the project that I think will address a lot of those comments. And so anyway, these are just a few of those. Trying to get folks to pay attention, besides those of you like yourselves who are at regular meetings, paying attention to what's going on in your city, trying to get folks to pay attention to what's going on in their city, even if it affects their route to work, route home. They really don't pay too close attention to it until the backhoe shows up and starts creating havoc for their commute. So we have had some public outreach meetings, a couple of open houses, but for the most part, we didn't get nearly the feedback that we thought we would get. And one of the things that one of our city commissioners actually suggested was, hey, you guys need to, especially with the business community, you need to go door to door. These folks don't know what's coming their way, and when they find out, they're going to be kind of upset about it. Or happy about it. We weren't really sure. So as that was one of those suggestions that we kind of heard loud and clear, and we said, well, we should do that. So we actually use a company that helped us with our open houses, the same public information firm that kind of puts together some of our messaging and flyers. And we hired them for some additional time to go ahead and go out and actually stop into businesses during their workday and make sure they had contact information for the project manager and knew that the project was coming. If they had any questions that the firm could answer, obviously if it got too detailed into the design, the suggestion would have been made to go ahead and contact the project manager. So that effort happened. They went door to door and hit 75 businesses. We got more contact information for folks who indicated they would be interested in getting emails on it, and we're able to add those folks to our email distribution list. You should be on that email distribution list if you haven't received an email on the Malala Avenue project. Let us know. I'm pretty sure, my recollection is all the major committees are on that project advisory or project email list. So some of the things that we heard from them was basically positive because we're spending several $1 million in a corridor that they use. Obviously, they're concerned about construction impacts. That's usually the concern for businesses. But they had some other things, they really recognizing that it's an outdated boulevard that needs safety improvements, and looking for, there was one business in particular, Southridge Center, who kind of indicated that they have struggled with cut-through traffic, speeding cut-through traffic moving through the Southridge Center. And so when we talked to them, they said, oh, well, we were thinking of putting speed bumps in the parking lot there to slow traffic. And so we said, well, here's what we're planning to do. And they think that they're going to wait on those speed bumps until the project's done to see if they really continue to need that kind of a mechanism to slow traffic through their facility. One other concern that we heard at really our Transportation Advisory Committee meeting was, and this was a traffic engineer who was working with a shopping center, and their concern was for, so does everybody recognize where they're at here in the real world? So this is at Malala Avenue and Beaver Creek Road.
That's U.S. Bank.
Yes, that's U.S. Bank. And there's the gas station. I won't point because I know you can't see my pointer, but so this arrow is basically if you were headed southbound on Malala Avenue and wanting to make a right turn onto Beaver Creek Road. And the concern has come up because one of the proposals, now I said most of our work, and I said there was a couple exceptions to that, but most of our work is from Beaver Creek Road to 213. But this area is one exception of that, in that in looking at the traffic numbers for Malala Avenue, what the traffic engineers are telling us is they see a lot of traffic that's just cutting through on Malala Avenue and going further south. right? They're really not stopping in the corridor. They're really using it to get from somewhere in Oregon City to somewhere on Highway 213. And we know we're going to need to divert some of that traffic during construction because, and I'll talk a fair amount about construction impacts a little bit later, but one of the recommendations that they made was right now, if you're headed southbound on Malala Avenue and you come to Beaver Creek Road, there's one left turn lane that you can get into or two through lanes that you can get into. And one of those through lanes, you can make a right turn as well. And they said based on that trip traffic and based on the larger facility being Beaver Creek Road, their suggestion was we convert one of those through lanes to a turn lane, another left turn lane. So if you came upon this Beaver Creek crossing here, instead of having two through lanes, you'd only have one through lane and two left turn lanes. So based on that recommendation, we're incorporating that signal reconfiguration and striping reconfiguration in the project. And when we shared that at the Transportation Advisory Committee meeting and with the property owners in the area, one of the pieces of feedback that we got from the shopping center was concern that that through lane would be slowed or it would be less efficient if too many pedestrians were using the crosswalk there. So that Beaver Creek crosswalk, if a pedestrian were if we had enough pedestrians using it, the more pedestrians you have, obviously, the more pedestrians you have and the more people wanting to turn right, it could slow that through lane because now that's the only lane that's going to be through traffic or allow for the right turn lane. So we looked pretty hard at that particular concern as well, because when we heard that, we thought, well, that may be true. The consultant told us it wasn't true, but we questioned that a bit, and we said, well, tell us it's really not true. Look specifically at that problem. So they have, and they've shared a supplementary report with the team, which we've shared with the property owner and their engineer as well. But the reality of it is there is some impact, or there could be some impact depending on how much pedestrian activity you have there. But it's de minimis. It's not the kind of thing that would change their opinion of whether or not you should put the two left turn lanes in there. So we thought that was one pretty big piece of feedback that we really wanted to address. Pedestrian crossings have been pretty interesting and discussed a fair amount. We've got 3 mid-block pedestrian crossings. So aside from the signalized crossings, we've got 3 mid-block crossings. So I'm going to go through each one of those real quickly and share with you some of the thoughts that we've had. This is one of the locations where we're adding a median. And so along a lot of this corridor, we are trying to control access and limit access a little bit more so that right now it's pretty much open for all kinds of turning movements, right? You can turn from just about anywhere to get to just about anywhere. The finished product will include some medians that will be will prevent mostly left turns, and the one big one is and I call it the big one because it gets the most traffic, is the left turn into, so this location, it's not very prescriptive unless you know the addresses, but this is the shopping center. Black Rock Coffee sits about where the pedestrian signal is. Wells Fargo Bank is sitting over here. So this median, and I know you can't follow that, but maybe Christina, can you use your cursor to kind of just go over what I'm going on so that they know what I'm doing? Just showing that median right there. So that median right there, obviously, if you're headed southbound on Malala Avenue and want to turn left into there, you would be prohibited from doing that. And that helps a lot. The other movement that you wouldn't be able to do would be able to come out of the intersection and make a left turn out, right? So you'll have to, if you use this location, you'll only be allowed to go right. So that helps and I think just moves cars efficiently along there, but it definitely forces folks to the intersection or to other driveway accesses to get in and out of that property. What this does do is give us an opportunity for the mid-block crosswalk, which is about midway between Claremont and Beaver Creek Road. And what we see right now is a lot of jaywalking in that area from folks that are really coming they may be, we don't know where they're coming from, but we know a lot of the residents that live in the apartments, they do that. And, you know, just shoppers generally that are trying to get maybe even to the county offices or somewhere else, they may cross that.
If you only had one left turn signal on Beaver Creek and everyone else turned down Beaver Creek to that shopping area, you only have one lane, that'd be a disaster. It's already blocked up, you know, so badly, the one lane you're left there. So you really need 2 lanes turning left on the Beaver Creek there.
Yeah, I think I agree with
if you ever
that.
use this shopping center, yeah, you're taking business away from them.
There's good access points off of Beaver Creek Road.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, we think the improvements we're going to do at Claremont are going to help that a lot as well. But anyway, that's one of the locations. I want to say the next slide shows a little bit of that because there's also been some concern about what these impacts would have on that shopping center. This is the shopping center who told us they supported the idea of the median there. And they, again, part of that was just through some of the cross traffic through their facility that goes from there. You know, you can use that narrow little pathway to get there. Why they would go from here to there, I can't exactly explain other than they might find that faster than trying to go all the way down Malala to get to Fred Meyer. But anyway, they talked a fair amount about cross traffic. The other thing I'll mention about Beaver Creek Road is we just got word about another grant that we received for signalization interconnect along Beaver Creek Road. That's a separate project, but the idea there is before this project will be done, we will have signal coordination that we don't have right now on Beaver Creek Road. So you got that grant? We did get that grant. Okay. So it's about $1 million grant that will improve. It'll upgrade signal controllers and will make sure we've got signal interconnect, and that information will be read so that county does all our signal maintenance and management, and they'll be able to review that from their command center, if you will, and be able to make adjustments when needed, those kind of things. So it really goes from Warner Milne to Maple Lane. So it's the entire Beaver Creek corridor. So that should help with other efficiencies as well. But the main point of this slide is that there's lots of other access options along to the shopping center, and we think while it's going to require folks to do things differently than they do today, myself being one of them, I use that left turn all the time because I go to my favorite O Teriyaki. This was another location, a lot of discussion. Amy was pretty involved in this discussion about this pedestrian crosswalk being, should it be here or should it be at the Gardner intersection? Right now it's at the Gardner intersection.
Garden Meadow.
Garden Meadow, thank you. Garden Meadow intersection right near the other... Biscuits, but I was thinking the store, Wilco store. And this doesn't show that intersection, but there's a new signalized intersection at First Street going in. And that puts it, in our opinion, that's too close to have a crosswalk to that intersection. So we are, and the other problem we have here is a lot of, we've got the Biscuits driveway and we got the post office driveway. And just trying to find that perfect location for where that crosswalk would be. We've looked a fair amount between the fire station and the post office. And we did, one of the other suggestions was that we do our best to work with the post office on opening their back entrance so that through traffic can happen.
They've had too many wrecks there and too many problems in the back of that lot.
They have shared that kind of information with us as well. But we're not giving up, are we?
No, we're not giving up.
Oh, that's good. So I wasn't sure we'd be successful until Amy and Angela told me they were going to gang up on the post office too. So maybe
Joyce was going to spearhead that project with us. No, they never do it. Anyway.
So anyway, when we did talk to them about it, we talked about preferred locations from their perspective as well. And so I think this is about as close to a compromise as we can get on this crosswalk. We think it's a safe location. It definitely keeps it far enough away. One of the things, if you start looking at the boulevard in a longer kind of map, these are just little pieces, but we tried to space crossings or pedestrian crossing locations at optimal locations so they weren't all too close to, an intersection or too far from an intersection. We're still not really even, Metro tells us they'd like to have those pedestrian crossings even closer, but we still need to move traffic along this corridor too, so we're trying to space those out. But this is the current plan for the pedestrian crossing near Garden Meadow. The last one is I'm trying to OC Point and help me out, Amy. What's the name of it? Chardias. It kind of falls in between those streets there, and it's not perfectly located either, in my opinion. I mean, we may see a fair amount of pedestrian traffic that comes from the Christian school that's a little bit south of here. Obviously, we've got community college traffic. OC Point is a generator traffic. A lot of people want to go there. But we've also got the curve and the wider lanes coming off of or onto 213 there.
Well, and Lazy Creek's going to open up.
Lazy Creek's going to open up as well. So
through Street.
Again, trying to find a location that worked well. I think what I heard last was we also had some issues with Sureguard and some of their access needs. So we think this is located in such a way that we're far enough from the curve as people coming around the curve, and if it's not too far north for those that may be coming from the Christian school or from some of those neighborhoods or off Lazy Creek, and yet also useful for those from coming down Chardias to come walk down basically a wider sidewalk on Malala Avenue and then come to this crossing location. Each one of these has those pedestrian activated rapid flashing beacons. So we've got one in front of the library where, you can, as a pedestrian, you can walk up to that button, hit the button. Please do. It frustrates me when I see people crossing there at John Adams and at the library and don't use that pedestrian rapid flashing beacon. So please use those when crossing. Yes, Bob?
Could you go back to the previous slide with that other crosswalk? Okay, so I notice both of those now have an offset crosswalk, which is a real positive development, I think.
I think what you're talking about is coming across, turning, and going the other way. Is that what
yeah, so it forces people to look at the oncoming traffic.
Right. Yeah. So in theory, a pedestrian will cross here, turn and face the traffic, and then go the other way. We see a lot of those in places that have a lot of mid-block crosswalks. Yeah.
And once you push the button, look at cars. I think you push those buttons and walk right out. Don't even look at traffic. That's scary.
Yeah, they're pretty bright flashers, and in this graphic, I'm not sure why the pedestrian signs are shown offset. It's mostly because we had that crossing moved further south before, so I think they just haven't changed the drawing. But yeah, there's no guarantees when it comes to a boulevard like Malala Avenue and even a signalized crossing. We've seen problems with that at Pearl.
John, have you seen the little plaques that you can put on right by where you push that says "Get eye contact with the drivers"?
Look, I think there's a couple of eyeballs or something like that. I have seen those. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it'll help, but.
Your card is up. Did you have something else?
So I have a 15-year-old that goes to high school. So I think the 2 left lanes going is a great idea because I get backed up there at certain points. But I'm a little bit nervous about the high schoolers using 2 left lanes. So is there going to be like a little bit more markings that are clear for them? Because I'm kind of nervous about the high schoolers going through that intersection personally.
My recollect, and this is, I always hate to rely on my recollect, but my recollect is that, yeah, we've got the white skip lines shown through the intersection.
That'd be cool. Yeah, that'd be great.
I'm going to write that down, though, because I might forget.
Yeah, especially because they don't know where exactly to keep going.
There's less high schoolers driving. Like when I was 16, I got my driver's license the first day possible, but there's less of that now. But the idea is it is still pretty scary because I take a left there to take my high schooler to the high school, and there's a lot of, and then the other thing is the road work. When are you guys planning on doing it? Like starting in the summer, hopefully?
That's a super good question. I'll get to it because I have a slide. I want to get to it. So the other thing, how am I doing on time?
You're past your 15 minutes by 5 minutes already.
Sorry. You heard it. Cross Street banner. I got to get moving here.
He's going to skip that because Gaffney doesn't want that, so he's going to skip that.
Okay.
One other thing though, right
See
before,
now.
all the
Had to
high
get my
schoolers
dig in there.
really like Black Rock, really like it. So like the ones coming from, the old part, Oregon City going in, they really like taking that left into Black Rock. So is there another way to get there? That's the high schoolers like.
At the back.
They got to be like,
The best way would be to use the intersections. but
okay,
yeah.
okay.
So Amy brought it up. So we do have, we applied for a grant and got opportunity for a cross street banner. The main thing that I heard was they don't look good and they can be a distraction. And so we've heard that. It won't be lit up and flashing beacons or anything like that. Tastefully done. We're still trying to figure out, the ask was that we try to solicit proposals from different artists that do this. Well, there's not too many that do this. We know of one that does it locally and uses recycled streetlights. And so we're kind of working with him to figure out what that looks like. But banner location, we heard both sides of that, Amy, as you know. I think you and I have talked about this a little bit, which is a lot of the community likes the idea of having banners, and I think even Amy likes the idea of having banners. It's just this location was the main concern. Is that right?
There's a couple concerns, but one especially is not necessarily the quality of the banner pole itself, is the banners.
The banners.
They're up there and they start shredding, and because of all the changes that are going on in here, there's a lot going on. We've talked about this, how many driveways there are. That's not a good place to be looking up. That's one of our biggest concerns too.
Yeah. One of the suggestions was, once we have them up, is there still going to be a need for public messaging about the project? So we may use it at that point in time, but it might make sense to take a pretty big break and wait for a few months until folks are really kind of. So that's a good suggestion that I could I'll just put banner timing, but anyway. So there's a banner. Beyond my time, we've got kind of a gateway plan for this, mostly landscaping with some basalt walls. I think we're talking about adding electricity so that if, for instance, holiday lighting we wanted to do along there, that could be, definitely see this as one of our entryways, even though it's well inside the city limits.
What is this location?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. This would be near Highway 213. It would be on both sides of the road. This is showing the side that's on the OC Point side. So traffic impacts. So this is the one that transitions into construction. So if you like to use Molalla and you use it regularly, when we start, I'm going to suggest you don't. If you can avoid it, you'd probably be better off, because for the most part, from the get-go, we're going to see 2 travel lanes on Molalla. And while we only have 2 travel lanes, right now it's 2 wide travel lanes with a center median. And this is probably not going to have that. In fact, we're probably going to, and I haven't seen all the specifics on this, but limiting the turn movements to some degree. We don't have alternate routes for Molalla Avenue other than Beaver Creek Road and maybe Myers Road if you want to go that far out of your way. So trying to even find alternate routes for bicyclists, I think we'll have signs that will encourage them to go to use Beaver Creek, but I doubt we'll be that effective with the bicyclists, for one. So they'll be on the roadway with vehicles, so there'll be warning signs on that. And then at Claremont and Gaffney, right now we've got signals, but during construction, we're talking about 4-way stops at those locations. So it's really going to slow down traffic. It's not going to be an efficient use of your time to drive through the construction zone. So tell your neighborhoods when we get started that we recommend they go a different way.
Take a 3-month vacation.
Get to the post office.
Wait till I retire.
Well, there's certain businesses that you can only have one option to get there, right? So,
And while that's going on, get them to open up fur so that we don't have to go back out.
yeah.
So it'll start summer?
So, yeah, we're getting it might start, it's going to start sooner than summer, but anyway, lots of impacts and, lots of messaging about, yes, we're still open for business because we recognize there's a lot of businesses on that you have to use Molalla. So we'd like to save the capacity for those folks. So early construction work, we're right now putting together a separate contract for some tree removal so we stay out of trouble with migrating and nesting birds. So that's going to be some of the first things that are going to happen. And we've got a variety of tree removals to get through. I want to say there's 21 trees that we're removing. We haven't exactly heard from PGE because PGE is moving all of its power poles on that side, on the west side of the street. They're moving them out, which will mean some of those will be in conflict with trees as well. So we're not transplanting, let's start over. We are planting 58 street trees along the corridor as well. So those usually start small, but as you know, along Molalla Avenue, they get bigger later. But that's how we're mitigating that. So you'll see tree removals first, and then you're going to see the utility companies moving in, and they're going to set their new power poles and start moving over all the high voltage transmission lines that are up high, and then the lower voltage transmission lines. And then if you notice Molalla Avenue, there's a lot of that overhead utility, so all the communications, fiber companies, those folks will move over as well. So pretty big effort going on there, and that'll be the first thing that you see.
John, are they moving over or underground?
They'll all be moving over. Nothing other than the city's facilities are going underground.
Okay.
So we will have a lot of underground utilities in that corridor as well, but they'll be related to signals and fiber and irrigation, those kind of things. So we've pretty much talked about the schedule. We expect to be out to bid for the construction in March, and construction begins late spring. And we're right now, just due to the scope of the work and all the various trades that need to go in there, so keep in mind, aside from sidewalks and all the great benefits, one of the major things that we have to do that's going to be most impactful is that is an old ODOT highway, and it's done a really good job of holding up traffic. But when you think about the kind of loading and the amount of traffic that's on that with buses and trucks and those kind of things, the pavement section that includes the base rock and the pavement is about 19 inches. So that entire roadway from one end to the other is planned to be fully excavated down 19 inches, re-rocked in and repaved. So we're going to have to do that in phases. We get that, but trying to do all that and get it paved in this 2020, we're like, I don't even think we'll be ready for that, and at this time next year, and we're already too late in the season for paving this time. So we think we're going to be into spring of next year. There may be a little gap in there, and it'll look fairly temporary, but that's kind of the challenge that we have, is probably not a long enough winter to get it all, or long enough summer to get it all done. Okay.
I have a question.
That's it.
Okay, Rita?
Something that I don't understand is Molalla's going south, and we get down to Beaver Creek Road, and there's an extra lane, but there isn't an extra lane to go straight through. And it seems to me that if that lane's going to be there, it should say something like right turn only, because as soon as you get across Beaver Creek Road, you've got two cars trying to get in front of you to go south.
That's going away.
That's going away.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing, you talked about a median, and I noticed it more on McLaughlin. I wish that there would be a policy to paint yellow around where you have to go around the median, because sometimes when the weather is bad, you really, I mean, I know the area left now, but somebody that hasn't driven it all the time, I don't see that done. I think of the same thing as I pull out of Kaiser onto Sunnyside Road. It's kind of hard to see where the road is.
Right.
That's
a good point.
And
That's
then,
a good point, Frida. That's a good point. I think typically they try to cover that with better lane striping so that they stripe the lane edge as opposed to the median, because it's typically a yellow stripe there, and if the curb is painted yellow, depending on the conditions, you may think that
I'm talking about across
the nose.
To cross the street, here's the median, and I'm pulling out to go onto Sunnyside, say at Kaiser.
So you're coming out of a driveway onto the roadway and you have those things. And Sunnyside area is really bad because I've had the same problem.
Yeah.
Sunnyside's terrible with those.
It's terrible.
You just can't see where they're at.
Okay, yeah. I noted median.
Should go do a road trip.
Yeah, Sunnyside. Check that. That's the problem area. Right?
Yeah.
So it's
Not a good example.
Yeah, problem. But I mean, it's the same sort of thing at an intersection any place.
Well, yeah, I mean, how many people have high-centered there in front of Sherry's on McLaughlin?
One of the things
to go get coffee going that direction on Malala.
I'm sorry, what's that?
There's no place that you can turn to get coffee.
Oh.
No, there
that
isn't.
direction.
There isn't.
Because you
Isn't
can't
that Coffee
turn.
Rush?
Can't turn to.
Coffee Rush by Papa Murphy's? Turn right.
You're just going to have to. I don't drink coffee, so it's not really.
Because you can't get to any place where there is
there from here.
Burgerville, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions?
Is there any kind of a crosswalk light besides the kind that we've put in on by the library? Is there any other way that, I mean, if you push a light that says walk, does all the traffic stop? Or just cross traffic?
So at the signals, you'll get a regular signalized intersection crossing, but at these mid-block crosswalks, right now, the industry standard is these rapid flashing beacons, and they have definitely become the industry standard, and they're amber lights. So they're not a red flashing light that says you shall stop. They're an amber light that says caution, look for peds. And the pedestrian, I mean, there may be some pedestrian education that needs to happen with these things, but the idea is
In the school.
it just tells you. So I think I heard the comment over here, don't just push the button and think you're clear to go.
Oh, yeah, right.
Right? It's no different than just because you get a walk signal at a signalized intersection doesn't mean you're just, you may have the right of way and you may win that court case if but,
you live.
Right, there you go.
Right.
So it'd be better for you to, do that, pay attention, but make eye contact with that car. And that eye contact can be more than eye contact. I mean, wave at them, yell at them, whatever you want to do, just to make sure that they know you're there.
Make sure they stop.
And that's true. That's true at just about any one of our arterials, because our arterials carry a lot of traffic, and people are busy. And I've talked about Pearl, where we've had 2 recent incidents there, and you just the A-pillar in your cars, the mirrors, lots of times they all block your sight distance at that turn. So in any turns. So, I'm always kind of looking around my mirrors as a driver, but as a pedestrian, just now I went to Super Torta tonight. Pay attention, and it was dark, and I had the green button, but there was a car right there ready to turn right on Washington, and I looked at him and pointed and waved and across the way. So I always instruct folks to do that, because it seems like we need lots of reminders about that.
Okay, any other questions?
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks, John. All right, public comments, seeing none. Staff liaison? Do you have any
Just a brief update. The October presentation is available as a link As of last week, on the 25th, we have 4 neighborhood associations that have turned in your CIC names. So if you have not done it, please do it. Send those to Katie Riggs as soon as your neighborhood association has approved those names. Get those going. Berkeley Hills, Caulfield, Kenema, Rivercrest are not on that list, so get going. I also wanted to, I try to do this every December. You all could be spending Monday night watching Dancing with the Stars.
Football.
Come here for football. So thank you all for being a good volunteer. And if you don't like the flavor of chocolate, change the flavor.
My good wish.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
It's nice of you.
I'm gonna have some candy and Christine, would you hand me an agenda?
Oh, sure.
I looked back there and didn't see anything.
Okay, as far as staff, this time, if you could make sure a letter is sent to Lenity to their,
Yeah, we'll have the agenda that they came and a link to the meeting minutes, and that works.
okay, yeah, if you could just make sure they got that.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay. All right, any other?
No, that's all I have.
Okay, as far as general business, I went to the, oh my gosh, time just gets away from me, but I went to the city commission November something and put our proposal out as far as using our bylaws, having two representatives, and the chair putting together the minute or the agenda. They were very open to that. What they asked us to do is to put together our bylaws and put together the proposed code amendments, bring it to them in a work session to look at, and then they didn't see any reason that they would not move forward with that, but that's what they've asked us to do. So what I would like to do is have volunteers that would be willing to do a subcommittee that we can meet off-site. We can take our other bylaws. There won't be a lot of changes needed, I don't anticipate. And then to change the bylaws, update the coding.
That would be the ones that we updated together. You mean the bylaws that we...
The bylaws that, we'll take as a start the bylaws that we approved back in 2014.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That will be our starting point. There'll just need to be a few tweaks. We could take off grievances and thank goodness, I don't know, and then whatever else. So if there's anyone here would like to be on that committee besides myself and Bob, John?
I'll do it.
I will.
And Rita? Okay.
That's good.
That's great. So we will get that going.
So Amy, you will head up that subcommittee, organized meetings?
Yeah.
Okay.
If that's okay, or do you want to do that?
No, that's fine. You go ahead. Yeah.
Since I won't be chair after, I'll have more time. But we'll probably need to meet with, I don't know if we need each meeting with staff or just because as far as making sure.
I can just attend whatever, yeah, it's just send me.
Because we could probably have it there at the planning.
Yeah, I can get a meeting.
That way we can make sure.
So I have Rita, Bob LaSalle, John Keys, and Amy.
Yep. Okay. Great. Okay. Round table. Carla. Wait, I challenged you last time to actually have something to share, so think about it if you didn't, besides just, we had our meeting and here's what we did. A concern or something that you've accomplished, something that you can brag about, or something that your neighborhood's concerned about that maybe we can jump on board with.
I can share about what happened at our last meeting. Do you want to share our concern that's mutual, or I'll let Janice do that because she... So first off, I'll go through the meeting real quick, and then I'll have Janice share both our concerns. So we had a meeting. We had Christina from our drinking water department come in and talk about water quality. It was pretty good. We had not many people, slow meeting. We had to do an election based on we had enough people to vote, but it was pretty scarce. So I made a point, I recorded it so I could share with residents that actually are curious, which I have a regular resident that I share the recording with, that, you know, if someone comes up interested in the CIC or someone that's interested in being secretary or treasurer, that we could, you know, entertain that in the future. So, but other than that, we had also Pete Walker come in, just sharing, you know, it was just kind of reintroducing himself to the neighborhood. And that was pretty much it. It was pretty quiet, so. And then did you want to share?
Yeah, Carla and I went to the opening of the Veterans Facility.
Mm-hmm.
That was interesting. One of our concerns is we need our crosswalk at Barkley Hills, because it's really dangerous there. Really, really, really bad.
Have you gone to the Transportation Advisory Committee with that? Okay.
They just keep, you know.
I had to fight to get information about the Veterans Facility for Janice and I to go.
Nobody was invited from the city.
Yeah, which we were kind of disappointed.
Nobody was there.
It was like they didn't know. Like, we had to fight to find out. And I've heard the management's really nice. The family who's involved in help founding it are really nice people. And what they're hoping for in the future is that possibly the community would be involved in wanting to teach classes there for the people there, to kind of maybe a book club. The manager of the property seems, from what I hear, pretty active, so I was going to invite him to our next neighborhood association meeting. So, yeah, so.
Where is it located?
We felt like our
Pleasant Avenue, where Pleasant peels off. That's right.
Yeah. It's off of Caulfield Road.
Yeah, it's like a little road off of Pleasant, off of Wawa.
There's no road there? It's not new, it's old.
I mean, there's another road there, though.
Yeah, behind, where they pull in for parking.
Our impression was that our city government wasn't even, or staff weren't even invited. Like, it was what our impression was, which we were hoping that they'd include our city more. It seemed more like the county, and then it felt like, well, what about our city? Because our city's responsible, and it would have been nice for that city to be invited, so.
Yeah, they pretty much patted themselves on the back and said, look what we've done. Look what we've done.
So,
what we've done.
And it would have been nice, an opportunity for our city to be included, so that's our opinion.
Now it's in our lap.
Right. Okay, well,
sorry.
Keep us posted. Maybe there's something that we can help bridge.
Yeah, that's what we've been trying.
Yeah, so that's what I talk about at our next steering meeting next week, so.
Right. And the crossing, talk about that at your steering, and maybe you want to come to the CIC with a request or a letter of support or something.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
I know we'll have one of those next month from another neighborhood, so.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Kenema presented our check to the police department, because we did raise the money to bronze the boots. And kudos to Dennis Anderson for donating a picture that he had drawn of the boots and the police department. It was just very nicely done. He did an excellent job.
It was gorgeous.
Gorgeous, yeah.
Yes, good job.
We made the paper. Yeah. That's it.
Don?
We met on the 26th of November. We had police department and a man dealing with vacancy and homeless report. I wonder if you know the Ninth Circuit Court passed a ruling, whatever, that the homeless can stay on public property, and that we have this problem right now, and until we used to not allow it, but that court, or so until something changes there, you might know that, so that's a mess. We had a guy doing a presentation on the second home, kind of homeless high school kids. They go house to house, whatever, and trying to get them situated in a house with a sponsor. They graduate, the graduation rate goes from 56% to like 93% when they get a home and actually have a place to sponsor and actually go to in school. So it helps these homeless kids get out that they have nowhere else to go. That was interesting. John Lewis did a presentation on the Beaver Creek and Malala projects. It was interesting. All the talk was out Malala concerns and the questions. Malala, they didn't really talk about Beaver Creek in our neighborhood. That was kind of a shock. We had a pretty good turnout. Postcards got out late. After everything went on, after John spoke, most people left. we had nominations for positions, and our chairman is leaving, so there's a little bit of concern. So someone volunteered to be chairman just so we'd have to close down our meetings, you know, because we get a good 25, 30 people out with an interview for meeting that. So someone volunteered and got voted in and so forth. So, you know, won't mention names, just initials, John Keys, so.
Welcome to my world, John.
Oh, okay. Not gonna close meetings, that's, you know, that's just ridiculous, so, you know, I don't wanna be inactive, so we're there, with the second chairs will remain. We don't have a secretary, we don't have a CIC person yet. I said I would do that again if there's no one else gonna do it, and trying to contact people this month and see to get people to volunteer to do something.
Was your postcard issue an internal issue from your neighborhood or with the
I
project?
don't know. I got mine a day before and some people got the same day as the meeting. I'm not sure what happened.
Okay. That'd be
I just
interesting
heard that when we
to
got
find
there.
out, if you could find
Yeah.
out.
Yeah,
Because
so
we're
we
trying to
just-
track that too.
Yeah, because the time before we didn't get e-cards at all. So yeah,
Yeah.
we've got a couple of
Okay.
bad card things. But the only thing I thought, we talked about our executive committee before. You know, we have, 4 city council members. Would it be advantageous, like if every council meeting member had 1 or 2, 3 neighborhoods that we had contact with one person to bring our, you know, things before the city, or is that just wasting energy? It's just been talked about, so I thought I'd bring it up. Just that, you know, we talked to a certain rep in our 2 neighborhoods, we might be able to get more information to him, and he represent us more strongly in things that are going on in our area.
I think the goal, I mean, at this point, I mean, it's definitely something that can be asked.
Yeah.
I think that's the goal. To usually Rachel's here and is our liaison
Right.
for all the neighbors. Salem, for example, that's what they do. They have commissioners over. But what they've found is the commissioners, because they're really busy, don't always make it to the meetings, and it doesn't always happen.
Okay.
So
We've just been
it's something that
talking
can be brought up.
Bring
but-
up, yeah. That's about it.
Okay. Gaffney Lane, we had our meeting. Again, the police, there's a big transition. Oh, golly, I just skipped over all of it. I'm going down the list, Bob. I'm sorry. I was going down the list instead of going through the thing.
deer in the headlights.
Deer in the headlights. Park Place. Okay, go, Bob.
We don't count for anything.
Sorry, I was using the agenda instead of the look.
For all of you that are eagerly looking forward to attending the Transportation Advisory Committee meeting this month, we will not be having one.
No.
I'm sorry. And then, you know, we keep talking about these inactive neighborhoods. Is there anything being actively done to try to reinstate the inactive
Not yet. I think the goal is get the bylaws, the code, get some clarification from city council on what we can do, or the city commission, I mean, and then we can,
Okay. And I'll,
because, yeah,
Steve will do the neighborhoods.
okay. Anything else, Janice? Okay. Steve?
We had a meeting this last month. What did we talk about?
It was on a Monday.
It was.
Oh, my word. It must have been a
I don't know that I was there.
happening meeting.
But at any rate, we talked about the post cleanup of the park, which still seems to be hot news in our neighborhood. So, and we'll have another one coming up in the spring, and the new playground equipment. What else we got? Presentation to the TAC on crosswalks. Hot topic. Because there's no crosswalks in Park Place.
And that'll be coming up at our next meeting, too. Okay?
Anything else?
You've already started into your holidays. Now is the Gaffney. I'm so sorry. Okay, Gaffney Lane. We had our meeting. Diliana is our planner. We haven't heard from her in a while, so she came and updated us on some of the, we asked her to give us an update on any land use in our area that we might have forgotten about, because, you know, sometimes they come and then they fall off the bandwagon, and you don't hear back, and So she gave us an update on several things that are going on we might have forgotten about. She gave us an update, a little bit of an update on the Willamette Falls Legacy Project, because we had a lot of questions about that, what was happening down there. And then John introduced us to the new project manager for the streetscapes presentation that he did here, and they brought the 90% maps, which I didn't let anybody look at till after the meeting because that we were afraid the same thing happened, you end and boom. So he did his presentation, we did a few other things, and then, well, actually, I think I went ahead of him, just even more trying to cut ahead. And then with people that wanted to stayed around, a lot of people were, our attendance has been up too, so that's exciting. At Garden Meadows, they provide incredible refreshments for us. They made cookies and they made some kind of bar heaven that it was chocolate and we don't even know what goodness was on there, but I think that helps bring people to it's good things. Joyce was there because of the project that we had, the Hillendale neighborhood. I don't know how involved they've been in this Malala Avenue streetscape. We've been trying to get them to join with us in some of our concerns, but they did come, and post office is a big concern. And so we had some other things that come up that, actually some good feedback from some of the neighbors with things that I get to follow up on. So it's exciting when you have larger attendance. I think that, I think it makes a big, good deal.
Kenny, first, thanks for the chocolate. Always enjoyable. We had our meeting on the 21st. We had a good presentation from Kelly Reed. She was acquainting us with some costs incurred with developing properties or remodels within our neighborhood. And lots of questions were asked of her. And it was pretty informative in terms of what they're planning to do with some of the needs for people who are planning to do some building. We also had we had a good turnout. We met at the library, which we're very happy to be a part of the library. It's a great facility to have a meeting. We also had neighborhood elections, and we found that happily we moved everybody forward again, so all the same candidates went forward unanimously, with the caveat that we added 2 new people to the steering committee. So we're really happy about having a new group of people get involved within our neighborhood, so we're delighted with that. And basically that's it. Of concerns, off topic with our neighborhood was I'm sure we all saw it, maybe even some of you maybe know more about it than I, but I was sort of curious about the issue with the Cove and what's taking place down there, and how that might impact, certainly with the prospect of getting Two Rivers involved back on our group. And I know, I don't know what the status is with Jerry Herman, and I know he's pretty active in a lot of ways. I don't know if he lives out, I don't know what the issue is.
He doesn't live in the...
He doesn't live in it, and I guess that's an issue. So I was just, after reading the article, I was just curious if that's going to impact the city in any way with respect to, our neighborhoods.
As do we all.
Yeah.
You want to go first, and then
Denise?
So the McLaughlin neighborhood meeting was November 7th, and we had a presentation from Willamette Falls, Providence, about their new proposal for their new oncology unit. It's going to be in the back of the hospital, so you won't even see it from Division Street. You won't even really see it.
Back where the parking lot is?
Where the parking lot is. They're going to reconfigure the parking area. There was a suggestion that they might add a parking structure, and that wasn't.
No, they said it was too expensive.
Wasn't a go.
We've been concerned in our neighborhood about taking property with lower rent houses and tearing them down and making parking lot. And we had talked about trying to get them to put the first floor be parking, maybe underground, and then, if you had an elevator, the person could go in a wheelchair, get on the elevator and get out. Now they park across the street. So, but anyway, that didn't work, and it's still not working on this new addition. One of the things they did say that they don't use very much is there will not be a helicopter landing.
Right.
Oh.
But that's not used very frequently, and they have other areas nearby that can do that. Another hospital subject is the old Oregon City Hospital is closing. And I go to the Episcopal Church, which happens to be in the Gloucester neighborhood, so I can talk about this a little bit. We serve a free dinner on Thursday nights. And we have a lot of homeless people, but we also have a lot of people that live down in that old hospital. And the state's helping them, but I would urge the city, if there's anybody with any kind of an idea of what to do. I mean, you know, their costs are being paid somehow, but not to the extent that a nursing home or a memory building would be. So if there's any way that housing could be obtained. I mean, we have a woman who has her one leg amputated. We have a man who has one leg amputated. These are not people that are out there taking off of the public funds.
Do they know what's going to happen with that building, those two buildings?
It's condemned.
Oh.
I think that's what I've heard. It's not in very good shape. Now, I want to talk about the Episcopal Church again that has nothing to do with it, except we're having what we call a St. Nicholas Fair on the 6th and 7th. And we sell raffle tickets for baskets, and basket number 1 has, this is the most treasured one, but it has 5 $100 Visa in it. And one that I'm able to get every year is an auto detail from Gladstone Mazda and Toyota. And I won it one year, and boy, that's a nice thing to do to an old car. But anyway, we give the money from our baskets to a community thing. And this year, it's going to Bloomin' Boutique, which is clothing for needy school children mostly.
Right.
And and there's 30 vendors and a good bakery and coffee. Anyway, I didn't say that.
All right.
Thank you.
Christina?
I don't have anything else.
Tony, maybe you can answer the question about the Cove and...
And I guess back to the facility on Washington, it's not condemned. I believe they're coming in for a pre-app to look at doing some work.
Talk a little louder.
I was trying to see if
He's looking up about the hospital. He said it hasn't been condemned.
Oh.
Yeah, so my understanding is it has sold. I think Police Department has reached out to the new owner, and there's been some discussion in coordination with Clackamas County Health and Human Services on what can be done for the residents that are currently there. The Cove, so the Urban Renewal Commission moved to rescind the amendment number 1 that allowed them to meet their preconditions, extended that date to May 20th of 2020. That was rescinded last Monday. And then they also directed staff to move to terminate the development agreement with the Cove LLC for not meeting their preconditions within the time period allotted. What we discovered in late October was that the Cove LLC was made up of 2 partners. Ed Darrow was a minority partner, and David Mooney was a majority partner. Mr. Darrow moved through a lawsuit and essentially moved to a sheriff's sale for breach of their operating agreement and became the 100% owner of the Cove LLC. This litigation had been going on, and the Urban Renewal Commission was not made aware by the developers that this litigation was going on while we were negotiating the amendment. So we feel that there was a fraud committed against the Urban Renewal District members, which justified termination of the amendment. Once the amendment was was annulled, rescinded. The DD, the development agreement, required that these preconditions be met by last August, so they were in violation of the development agreement. So there was a motion and a unanimous vote to terminate the DDA. So
Which one of the two developers was it that had been coming to the meetings?
David Mooney, I believe,
It
is
was.
probably the ones that you met, the older gentleman.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And one of the questions that was asked is how much money has been paid to them that's
I believe off the top of my head, it's around 360,000.
that was for part two?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. There was, so part one was actually a private development by Grand Peaks LLC.
Oh, different people?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. So the Urban Renewal District wasn't involved with monetary investment in the Cove at Edgewater. But with that investment, it was for things like the habitat restoration study and the potential to look at credits for essentially selling habitat as part of the mitigation around the Cove. It also included payments for some of the work that we would then become the owners of, such as an environmental phase 2 on the property. So there are some products that we will be getting for that investment in that property, in that
What
project.
about those two pieces of land that were sold?
Those will be, they have a reversionary clause in them that if the development agreement is terminated, that they revert back to the district. So, more to come on that one. Yep. I would encourage those interested in the discussion about homelessness in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals decision as it relates to camping. The Urban Renewal or the City Commission will be discussing that. The Police Department is bringing forward some ordinance changes to address policies related to how we deal with camping. The Ninth Circuit Court essentially said that if you do not have enough homeless beds, homeless shelter locations, a bed for a homeless person, that they are allowed to sleep in the public. Now, it's kind of turned into camping versus sleeping, right? And there's a big difference, right? Sleeping on a sidewalk versus setting up an encampment. And so this is trying to clarify the city's policy as it relates to the difference between sleeping somewhere versus setting up a camp with fire, everything that goes along with some of the camps that we've seen. So there'll be more discussion on that, and as that kind of winds its way through how that's implemented region-wide, and I'm sure there'll be probably additional litigation associated with that.
When is that meeting?
Wednesday the 4th.
Oh,
This Wednesday, yep. And then just a couple updates. December 5th, this Thursday, 6 to 8 at the library, we have a meet and greet for the 4 finalists for the library director position. So please feel free to come see the candidates as they move forward through that process. Oregon City, the tree lighting, downtown Oregon City tree lighting is Saturday, December 7th, 4:30 to 6 down at Liberty Plaza, 8th and Main in downtown. And then we're also having Heritage Holidays on December 7th as well. So admission is free. McLaughlin House, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Holmes House Museum at the Rose Farm, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Stevens Crawford House, 10:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And the Ermitinger House from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And like I said, admission of those will be free, and there'll be small events and festivities at each of those locations. That is the updates I have for you, unless you have a question for me.
Any other questions? Okay. With that, anything else for good of the order? Then we are adjourned.